Are you tired of all the voices who say, focus on the bottom line numbers?
Say whatever you have to, just close the sale.
Just get the credit card. It doesn't matter what you deliver.
You will never build a successful business until you grow a pair and stop caring so much.
Here, we respectfully disagree. We give you permission to embrace who you are, how much you care, and encourage you to design a business that works for you and your clients. Welcome to The Art of Giving a Damn, the podcast that proves with every single episode that you can create a profitable business doing what you're passionate about and making a positive difference in the world. Now here's your host, Cheryl Scheurer.
Hey, welcome to another episode of The Art of Giving a Damn. My guest today is Dr. Cheryl Scheurer, who is, boy, you've got a lot that we could talk about and a lot we could share. Let me start by introducing you to the audience. You have been an entrepreneur for practically your entire life, and you've got a PhD that's in finance and business administration, but you're also an author, a coach, and a minister, which is a really interesting combination. So let's start there. Let's start with, how did you get into where you're at today and what you do around wealth consciousness and the type of work you do with entrepreneurs?
Oh my goodness. Well, how long do you have? No, I can streamline it. Well, I grew up, I'm from the Bay Area, from Palo Alto, and fourth generation Californian. And my dad, when I was 5, my dad became an engineer with Boeing. And so we moved up to Bellevue, Seattle, just outside of Seattle, when I was 5. So I grew up there from 5 until 21 when I moved back to California. But in that time, I was probably 13 or 14. I started babysitting. I mean, I did everything I could to make money.
Okay.
I just kind of have that, I liked having my own things and being able to buy my own things.
Gotcha.
So I started babysitting when I was 9 and 10, and I'm good at saving. I had a grandmother who used to say, and it's right here in the back of my head and here, she always said, save your money, save your money, save your money. Anyway. So,
that's good advice.
Yeah,
good advice from a grandmother.
Absolutely. She was a wonderful grandmother. So anyway, when my dad, let's see, I was about 13, 14, he was laid off. And that was huge for our family. I'll never forget that day as long as I live.
Wow.
And so, I don't know how long it took, but right after that, he started his own business. And now my family, traditionally, we're all entrepreneurs. Like my brother's an entrepreneur, not my sister, but my grandparents have their own business. Anyway, so I got involved when I was about 14. I got involved with, he had, and this is not the business that I wanted to stay in, but it was an auto parts machine shop business, because my dad was a mechanical engineer. So I got involved with sales. I got involved with inventory. And when I got involved with inventory, I thought to myself, I do not want to do this for a living.
Okay, so there was some good entrepreneurial lessons and some valuable ones.
Well, there's no pun intended here, but I learned the nuts and bolts of business.
Okay.
Anyway.
That's great.
So, I worked with my dad for like 8-9 years. But in that time, I always was kind of ambitious or driven. So I got into banking after high school, even before I went back into my education. So I had banking, but I always had that, like, since I worked with my family and all of my grandparents had their own business, blah, blah, blah. I wanted my own. So I started off with a bookkeeping business.
Okay.
I was about 22, 23 at the time. And so anyway, I had that accounting. It just evolved. into an accounting tax business for 17 years, actually.
Wow.
And in that time, I got married and pregnant, and I became a single parent. And so I'm just kind of streamlining this. So I ended up going back into the corporate world, which I had been in, several years before that. And I was reluctant, but I thought, hey, I might have a little bit more security.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was a consultant or a manager. So, and it was just interesting because this is like the pivot of how all this started of what I'm doing today. But every company I'd get involved with, there was like unethical, lack of integrity, and even illegal things going on in the corporate environment. And I don't play that game. I mean, there's a game to play, and you play it right, and not, without any kind of moral foundation. Anyway, so the last company, which was in 09, I went through an audit, an insurance audit actually, and it just surfaced that there was this illegal stuff going on, and I don't want to be part of it.
Yeah.
So I tried very diplomatically trying to get the managing director to change a little bit, and he didn't want to play the game. He did not want to play the game. So anyway, I went on vacation, and the day I came back, he fired me.
Oh. Oh, right. Well, that gives you some incentive to look at other options.
Yeah, totally. So, but I knew that there was something seriously wrong with this. So I ended up talking to like 5 lawyers, and they all said, you have a case. So I sued and I won.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was a long drawn out thing, but I won. And so in that time period, I wrote my first book and finished my PhD in wealth transformation. And that's my podcast as well.
Right.
So I wrote a book, and I started another one. I self-published the second one. The first one is Wealth Transformation, and it is also on Amazon. But I knew when I wrote it, it was kind of a little bit before its time.
Okay.
Because I talk about metaphysics. And a lot of people don't even know what that word means.
Right. Okay, so I'll ask the obvious question for anybody listening who's going, first of all, what is metaphysics? But second of all, what does that have to do with money and wealth? How do you explain that to somebody? Because that is a concept that not a lot of people are familiar with.
Well, if you look up the word metaphysics, it is the invisible, the material, and, well, I say the spiritual and the material that have married together.
Okay.
So when, our society is certainly, there's certain sectors that are trained about the spiritual approach to money. And so basically it's the same thing. It's the spiritual approach, and if you have done a lot of work internally, developing your own soul and being, then it's an easy concept to manifest what you are passionate and if you know what your purpose is, it's easier to manifest that. So, putting those two together, and especially today with what's going on, I mean, all of the corporate, governmental, and, all that's going on, it's all, the addiction to money and power and money.
Yeah. Yeah, you are not the only one I have heard. I have heard that story more than a dozen times of I was in corporate, I was working for someone else, and the reason I left was morally or ethically, I couldn't be part of what was going on. I think there is a huge percentage of entrepreneurs who that's actually why they started their business, was looking at it and going, this is not okay with me, and not knowing how to change it inside the system, and just going, okay, let's get outside the system and do something from a different perspective.
And in a way, that is probably because there's so many stuck old boys network. and I'm being blunt, but I've dealt with them head on. And, it's ignorance as far as I'm concerned, but it's also greed, and they don't want to change.
It is, and it's the climate, because most people don't realize that literally once you go public with a company and you are a corporation, that corporation is a separate person under law, and its only responsibility is to stockholders. Its only focus is make more money. And so it puts people in a situation where if they're not extremely conscious, and even if they are, legally, that has to be their focus, the money, the profit. And so it's tough to actually bring your morals and values into a business that's in that particular form. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, there's, in a sense, it's a poisonous system that we have set up, because
it's corrupt. It's totally corrupt. And it's, when I hear of, the corporations that are really having to pay their dues, I'm happy, because, it's like it isn't just our country, it's globally. It's like they're spiritually bankrupt, and because they have focused.
That's a great way to put it.
It's, they focus just on money, and that is, I've known, actually personally, I've known two multi-billionaires, and one was totally bankrupt emotionally and spiritually, and all he focused in was on his business and money. And at the end of his life, he's going to be one sad person. I'm sorry, and then the other one, he has his good points and bad points, but he was almost embarrassed to have the money. So there's different mentalities towards that.
Well, there is, and I think one thing that is really important is just the idea of prosperity. Most people are looking at it just like profit, money in the bank, profit. And prosperity means so much more than that. If you really want to have prosperity in life, it's not just financial wealth or even just material wealth. There's so much more to actually being a complete whole person in terms of prosperity.
Oh, absolutely. That's why, well, in going back to my history, I had my accounting practice, and then I, went into the corporate, and then I got out of the corporate and, started coaching. And then also I started a TV show. I was coaching a woman who was in the media, and she saw my passion, and she goes, you need to go to the local TV station and get something going. So that was like 7 years ago. So I started a TV show called Wake Up with Dr. Cheryl, Health Transformation. And I've had some fascinating guests. 177 shows later.
That's fantastic.
And I've turned them all into podcasts. I'm turning them all into podcasts.
That is smart. Well,
and they're all up on binge.
That's awesome. You know what I love about that? 177 episodes and interviews tells me that, and I know from talking to my audience as well, people listening to this podcast, that there are a lot of us who don't like the old model of business and the profit-focused piece of it. Yes, businesses should be profitable. Otherwise, you're not in business. You have a hobby or a tax write-off. But there is so much more to it, and it encourages me to hear things like that. Of 177 episodes in, people are excited about this concept, about this idea of wealth transformation. So let's talk about that for a minute. Tell me how you ended up teaching what you teach now. Somewhere along the way became a licensed minister, and then a little bit about what you actually do with clients.
Well, because I'm ethical and I do have a very strong spiritual base, I decided I'd become a minister. And so I did that several years ago. And even though I haven't pushed that, but it was my commitment to spirit, I guess that's what that was about. And, I really start to go, I'm a very deep person, and I like to go to the core issues of things. And I'm a truth sayer. I like to go to the core things. So when I'm coaching somebody, I really want to go to the root of what the mind, what the conversation is in their own mind about, how they approach spending, how they approach saving, how do they approach investing, what's the mindset there? Mm-hmm. A lot of people I mean, there's a reason why there is 2% of the population have 95% of the wealth, the money in this country. And, I've done stats, and there's enough money circulating on this planet, and maybe more now, that there's 7 billion of us. Each one of us, even the babies in Africa and India, can have $8 million apiece. I mean, when you look at the big picture, it's easier to, and the most important thing is, not spending more than you earn.
So simple, and yet that really is the key to all of it.
Yeah, and saving, tithing and saving are extremely important. And what can you do without? I had a former Barclays retired investment banker on my show, and that was the best advice wisdom is, what can you do without? Because our society is so hell-bent on consume, buy, spend.
Yeah.
And, it's an addiction. It becomes an addiction. Looking at those root issues, and then you can set yourself free, and be happy.
Well, so here's 2 questions. First, going back to what you said about like the distribution of wealth on the planet, what do you see as the path to shifting that and to beginning to empower a lot more people in terms of how financial wealth is spread? Like, what do you see that's like action steps we can take?
Well, what's going on right now, I think the main thing is taxing the 2%. I mean, what Jeff Bezos of Amazon, they made 11 point something billion dollars, and they're not paying 1 cent of tax on that. Is that right? Is that morally, ethically correct? No. So we have to change. This is a huge...
Yeah, I can see. So part of it, the solution is political changes.
Yes.
What do you see as things that we can do as individuals? Like, what are action steps people can take to actually make a difference in terms of empowering themselves? Affecting political change is a much bigger conversation.
Oh, huge. I mean, and that's going to be a hard nut to crack because there's too many old boys in that network. But anyway, it's like taking a look at what you're buying, what you're spending your money on. Do you have a budget? And most people don't even use a budget.
Yeah.
But looking at and saving, even if it's just 1 to 10%, put that in the bank because you feel better. You feel better when you have a little bit of a nest egg. So if you can save, they say, now today it might have changed, but you're supposed to have like 6 months of savings, but I think today that's changed because the economy has been so tight. I mean, it isn't tight, but one good thing is that I feel really good is that more younger people, whatever age, that workable people are becoming more self-employed. Yeah. And I heard statistics just recently on one of my other podcasts that like within the 10 years, now, I don't like to quote this exactly, but it was not my research, that about 50% of the population are going to be self-employed. And that's one way to change things, is taking that power to us instead of to the corporate environment.
I absolutely agree with that piece of it because I think entrepreneurship is the one thing that empowers people to take control of their own financial destiny. And really, it's about what you put in, you get back out. If you're willing to do the work and make your business work, you can succeed with it. And then you're not relying on a corporation whose politics or policies you may not agree with. And we tend to look at that as secure, but really security to me is in having your own business and being in control of it. The idea of you could come back from vacation and suddenly find yourself fired, that's not a feeling of security.
Nope.
Yeah, so totally agree with you on that. So let's talk about your book for a second. Tell me more about the book and where people can find it.
Well, it's called Wealth Transformation, Integrity, Integrity, Integrity.
I love that. A word so important, you had to put it on there 3 times.
Well, you know what? I quoted it from Buckminster Fuller.
Love that.
And, you know, I talk about metaphysics in all departments. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you know, the business part of it, the business model, I mean, 50%, I don't think this has changed over the years, 50% of your business is administration.
Yeah.
Keeping control of your systems and your money, et cetera. The other is your creative or whatever type of business you have. Then you can expand and do whatever to expand that. But, you know, having my book talks about my journey, my personal journey, and I've had some real challenging times because I've trusted the wrong people. I didn't trust myself.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of those stories that is in some ways so good for the rest of us to hear, because we realize, you know, everybody goes through those moments where they don't have that confidence in themselves, and how you get to the other side of it is everything.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I hunker down to the good old spiritual, you know, higher self when I listen to my intuition. When I don't listen to my intuition, it goes awry.
That is such a valuable tip for everybody to remember. Your intuition is there for a reason.
Absolutely, you know, and I know that it's, I mean, I've had this challenge is knowing when it's your actual intuition or your ego.
Yeah.
Ego can get in your way because the ego always wants to be in control.
Yes, it does. And it is important to be able to really distinguish those two and know, okay, what if this is coming from intuition and guidance, and what if it is coming from my own ego?
Yeah, and that's why I call it transformation, because it is. It's transforming, you know, from the inside out. And you can heal wealth from the inside out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and coming on today and sharing your story and some of what you do with the audience.
Oh, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
And if I could say that I have an ebook available, and they can go to my website, which is www.Cheryl, Cheryl, the last name is Scheurer, Shire.com. And they can go there and they can see my podcast and all my fabulous guests and my book. They can buy my book on Amazon. And I also do coaching.
Awesome. All right. So there's going to be a link somewhere to wherever you are watching or tuning into this episode today that you can click to go to Dr. Cheryl's website. We'll also put a link for you to her book on Amazon. So there's an easy to find. You can check them out, and do take a look at her podcast. The title of the podcast is Wealth Transformation. So if you just search for that, you will find her and dive into those conversations about everything going on in terms of wealth on the planet right now, what you can do to be more empowered, to take control of your finances, and really put yourself in a position where you do have security and where you do have happiness that doesn't just come from the amount of money in the bank, but from being truly wealthy as a person. Dr. Cheryl, thank you so much again for your time today.
Oh, and thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show and asking these important questions. Thank you. Thank you.
It is a very important conversation for us to have. All right. For those of you listening, please click like, subscribe, share, rate, review, whatever buttons or wherever you are tuning in today. Click them and stay caught up with the podcast. I will see you back again soon for another episode. Thanks for tuning in.